All right, let's go to the next part on the economy. This was actually could be consequential as well. This is another reason actually to relate to our previous discussion about why I'm always just a little bit skeptical about counting all these fundamentals for the Democrats. Let's put this up there, please, on the screen. There is an overwhelming amount of discontent within the American public right now about, quote, the American dream feels out of reach for most. And what is really interesting to me is both about how people define the American dream, and I think we're basically talking about the most basic things here. So for example, when it comes to achieving your own vision of the American dream, how important is each of the following? So nearly 100% say financial security is essential or important, but is essential and or important. Comfortable retirement, almost 100%. Home ownership, almost 100%. Annual vacation, something like 80%. Things, go down a little bit more whenever it comes to talking kids and or having marriage, but financial security, retirement, home ownership, annual vacation. So basically like decent life, quality of life, those are the things. And then the ability to support a family is somewhat less so. That's what people define as the American dream. Now, do you think the American dream, that if you work hard, you'll get ahead, still holds true? The precipitous drop in numbers really, I think, feeds the anti-establishment sentiment that I can't let go of. So for example, in 2012, the first time that they were asked this question, 53% of Americans said that the American dream, quote, still holds true. About 42% said once held true, but not anymore, and never held true was 4%. Well, now, if we look at 2024 numbers, 49%, so the majority actually, or the plurality here, say it once held true, but not anymore. Only 34 say that, quote, it is still holds true, and some 17% say it never held true. So the nihilism is very high, but probably even worse than nihilism is once held true, but not anymore. And that is where, I could just see that Make America Great Again messaging, as it did in 2016, resonating just enough with people who have been priced out of the American dream. Don't forget that the mortgage rate continues to remain high. Yes, an interest rate cut is coming, but that doesn't mean that the prices changes or anything, or that will be in the foreseeable future. Home prices have either stabilized or have gone up. Grocery prices and all that inflation, whenever we peg 2-4 years ago, is not good. Up almost 25, 30%. The fundamentals of a lot of where people see in life is still high to the point where they feel discontent. Now, the problem for Trump is that Biden was so tied to the 2020 status quo that he was such a winner on change, where Kamala has a chance to compete on change here and make it a little bit more of a contest. But in general, this is why I never count out Trump and the discontent feeling of actually building something new.
Yeah, I mean, this is like on a long-term decline.
Right.
And I think it's obviously there's the reality of housing has never been more unaffordable, right? All of the things that we think of as the bedrock of a stable middle-class life have become more and more and more and more and more and more expensive over decades, right? So yes, we have this very important inflation conversation about what you're paying at the grocery store, what you're paying at the pump. These are things that are in your face every single day and impact your budget every single month. But we've missed the inflation conversation that has led, I think, to this chart, which is, number one, no retirement security, right? The end of the guaranteed pension, effective end of the guaranteed pension, where now it's like, you gotta be out there saving on your own and hope for the market to work out for you. And there's just an amazing level of precarity that comes with that. Number two, healthcare, so expensive. And not a prayer that either one of these candidates have any interest in really fixing it. Kamala Harris wants to extend the Obamacare subsidies that were part of the COVID era package. And, Trump last time around tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They're trying to say this time maybe he won't do that. We don't really freaking know. But there's no plan to actually fix the situation. I think that's pretty clear on both regards. And as I said, over decades, healthcare has just gone wildly expensive. You think about a college education, what could be more associated with the neoliberal era of the achievement-oriented good life is you work hard, you go to college, you get that white collar job, you're able to, achieve that middle class or upper middle class, even prosperity. College education, so unaffordable, so expensive. And then maybe the most egregious rub at this point, it's obviously more than a rub, is housing costs. Rent is so expensive. To try to become a homeowner, which is really the bedrock of that, I've got my nest egg, I'm gonna be able to hand something down to my kids, I'm gonna be okay through good times and bad. It's just become so impossible to be able to put your foot on that ladder of home ownership. So who can blame? I mean, they're right? They are correct that it is very possible now to work hard, play by the rules, go to college, and then what? Then you're saddled with a mountain of debt, and your dreams of home ownership are only getting further and further and further away as the housing prices go up year after year after year. So there is and then you couple on top of that reality, just this, the vibes, that we're in a declining empire and our best days are behind us.
Yeah. So,
and that's how you end up with a chart like this. Now, to touch on the political point that you were making, this is an undersold part. Everyone talks about, obviously, Joe Biden is so old and the debate and there's disaster and feeble, all that is really the most important part. But this is, I think, an undersold part of why it was so beneficial to ditch Joe Biden and pick Kamala Harris, because she has not shouldered the blame of incumbency. So she has the benefits of people being able to see her in the role and the confidence she appears to have gained on the job without being saddled with the status quo unhappy legacy of Joe Biden or whoever the incumbent president would be at this point. And I think that is an undersold advantage for her, because she does have the ability, and I think has successfully claimed the mantle of the change candidate from Donald Trump. And part of her campaign theme is like, we're not going back to that, the ugliness of the Trump era and all that crap that, this era of politics that many of us want to be done with. We're not going back to that. So, in a certain sense, she's sort of ideally positioned by having been able to be in the role and people be able to see her in the role, but not being saddled with the burden of actually inhabiting the presidential office.
That's the only reason she has a fighting chance, period. And if Trump wins, or if Kamala wins, ironically, a lot of it will actually come down to this, because it will be whether people see Trump as a change candidate or if people see Trump as a status quo chaos candidate and wanting to
status quo and chaos. Yeah,
but, I mean that actually is a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the whole Trump case under the Biden era was what? Oh, all you had to worry about was mean tweets, and there's something to that, which is like all you had to worry about was some dumbass media controversy or like the current parsing of like, was he allowed a camera at Arlington Cemetery or not? I'm like, I don't know, maybe. But the whole point is like parsing all of those details as opposed to, hey, what was the housing price? What was the inflation, stock market, et cetera. Whereas nowadays, the Kamala people, which is interesting, under Biden, the Arlington thing is a good example. They would have been obsessed with this. Biden himself was obsessed with that, from my opinion, BS Atlantic story about the whole suckers and losers or whatever, based on the word of John Kelly or somebody else like that. And they made it a cornerstone of a Hillary-esque decency our children are watching. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a flavor of that to Kamala Harris whenever she gave her speech, for example, or sometimes in terms of Democratic media. But the general vibe I have seen from her is to like roll your eyes at a lot of the Trump era controversies and other things like that of the past and just say, okay, we're not going to focus on that. This whole quote, we're not going back. And, this is also where Biden being on vacation is so helpful to her. By the way, if anyone wants to check in on the president, he's actually on the beach right now in Rehoboth. Must be a nice job. He was on vacation in Santa Clara. There's a photo of him yesterday hanging out with Jill's friends on the beach. I'm like, yeah, if you weren't the president, that would be fine. That's probably what you should have been doing this entire time. But Biden's literally just sitting there doing nothing. He will apparently be on the campaign trail, I think, with Kamala in the state of Pennsylvania, I believe next week. But that's the only joint campaign appearance that they have scheduled right now so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said before, I'm beginning to become convinced that actually the election may be more straightforward than I've been portraying at this point. But there's a lot of twists and turns to come.
Yeah,
and
there's too many.
this data is certainly like, this hangs over it in a very profound way, that people are just generally unhappy with the direction of the country. And the Trump campaign will be spending a lot of money to persuade voters that they should saddle Kamala Harris with the way they felt about the Joe Biden presidency. And, there's a chance that could work.
I think so. Credit card debt, all-time high. Household debt sheet is all-time high. Costs are very, very high. The home ownership piece is very, very difficult. The interesting thing that overlays all of this is kind of the social conversation, because that's where we saw, if anything, it was way worse in 2022, because that's where Biden was the president. There was it was, the inflation was so in your face and so skyrocketing. Immigration situation was, just as bad then, but even more there
were more numbers at the border
numbers
at that
were
point.
both more in real time, but also it was a very shocking difference compared to just the last year. And that was also amid the whole blue state freak out amongst migrants being flown and bussed here. But anyway, what we saw is that social issues can trump these economic issues. And that's why I just come down to, I really wonder what people are going to prioritize at the ballot box. But I know when abortion is there, it's a problem. That's actually one thing that a lot of us are discounting, is this Florida amendment, which is on the books. So now, do I think Democrats are going to win Florida? No. But DeSantis won it by 20 points or something like that. If Trump only wins by 3 or 4
But I
at
think
this
last
point,
time Trump did only win by 3 or 4.
he did. I'm saying this time around.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Amidst the major realignment that's happened, all the massive inflow, the fact that it's effectively became a red state. But I'm really curious to see what that Florida abortion amendment vote does to overall Democratic turnout in the state of Florida.
There's a number of states that have abortion-related ballot initiatives. I feel like the Arizona one might have gotten pulled, actually. I have to double check. There was some court case about whether or not it actually should be on the ballot. But there are a number of swing states that have abortion initiatives on the ballot. And so, but just to go back to the housing thing, I'm surprised how much Kamala Harris has leaned into housing in her messaging as well. Because we've been talking about how that lane was wide open.
It was, yeah.
And it's such a pain point. And so the fact that she's leaning into that and talking a lot about it in her ads, I think is, I think it's intelligent and potentially consequential, understated in terms of the level of pain and just how central that is to people's lives. But as I was saying before, to me, maybe the most astonishing numbers we've seen in the polls are Kamala pulling even with Trump in terms of economic, who do you trust on the economy? Because even outside of Donald Trump, the businessman, et cetera, Republicans typically have an advantage on that number. And so that's, to me, that's quite extraordinary that she's even in the ballpark with him, because that's always been his biggest strength.
Yep.
I think that's been a bigger strength than anti-immigrant backlash, even back in 2016 when that was obviously a very hot issue as well. I think he's a businessman and he's going to be able to deliver for me personally has been the most compelling part of his pitch.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's turn now to immigration. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.